Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. A happy Friday to you. As usual, just making sure we're coming through okay. A time or two. I have talked for way too long without realizing that we don't actually have a live stream. Awesome. All right. So we do. Hi, everyone. Like I said, happy Friday. I love getting to do these trainings on Fridays because usually you're in a good headspace to start thinking about things. You're not hopefully as stressed as you're entering your week. So today we're talking about the 3 ways you're unknowingly, possibly hurting your marketing. And this is just based on conversations I've had with my own one-on-one clients in our strategy sessions and things like that, where I'm like, hey, what are you up to in your marketing? And we go through it and we actually identify that despite their best efforts, some of those things are actually working against them. So I want to share those with you. If it's your first time joining us, we actually are officially over 3,000 members strong here inside of this group. So if you're one of the new faces, maybe you've not caught one of these trainings before, hi, thanks for being here. My name's Anna. I'm a marketing and web strategist, and I work specifically with therapists and counselors. That's all I do because there's so much nuance to the work that you do, and that's one of the reasons we're going to be diving into these mistakes today. You can't just market your private practice the way that you would market any other type of business. And so I specialize in this area. I work on website and marketing strategy to help you be successful. And as we're going to be getting into today, it's really important to me that you aren't just marketing yourself in a way that gets results, although I 100% think that you need those, right? I want you to get booked out doing what you love, but that you're doing it in a way that aligns to you and who you are as a clinician and what makes you unique. Because your therapy practice is not any old business, and you as a therapist are not any old practitioner, right? There's something unique that you bring into the world. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that you're putting that out into the world in a way that gets you clients. So that's my spiel. That's my intro. If you're new here, if you're not new here, thanks for being here. This community just continues to amaze me at how engaged and helpful you are to one another, and the results that you're seeing and the incredible growth that so many practitioners are experiencing as a result of this community and of putting themselves out there in new and exciting ways. So if you're joining me live, I would love to know where you're joining me from. If you're catching the replay, these videos are up forever. So maybe it's 2022 and you're watching this, still drop a hashtag replay. That will make sure that I can see any questions or thoughts you have as you're making your way through this video. So if you're watching and you have some questions, if I'm not clear about something or you want to dive into something specifically, drop that in the comments. I'm always happy to revisit this, even if it's weeks or months down the road. With that, let's get into the 3 ways that you could possibly unknowingly be hurting your marketing. Now, like I said, there's so much nuance to the work that you do, and you know that. You can't go and get therapy clients the way that someone else would get, someone, if their business was, cutting hair or selling backpacks, they're going to get customers a lot differently than you would get clients, right? There are certain ways you can and cannot and should not market yourself as a practice owner. But the fact is, no matter what you're doing to grow your practice, you need results. You're not just doing this for fun, right? This isn't a charity. This is something that you should be making an income from. And I also recognize that, especially if you're still sort of straddling that line between part-time and full-time in your practice, or even if you are full-time, you only have, so many hours in a day. Hopefully you're seeing clients during that day or working on that. Maybe you still have a full-time job that you need to give your energy and brain power to. So you have limited time for marketing. And it's really important that whatever time you do have, you're seeing the most return on that investment, right? That investment, if it's your money or just your time and energy, that's still extremely valuable. And sometimes, despite your best efforts and despite everything you've read online and all the things you're trying, you still don't get results. And sometimes that's because underlying those marketing activities, there's actually a couple of issues. So let's dive into those 3 things. And I think some marketing, people, gurus would tell me that I need to put the most important thing last. But if you're joining this and you only have a couple minutes, I'm just going to hit you with the most important one, and then we'll hit the other 2 as well. But the number 1 mistake that you're unintentionally making in your marketing is you are not being authentic. And that might resonate with you like immediately. Like, I know I'm putting myself out there and not feeling good about it. It might take a minute for you to sort of reflect on your marketing. But the fact is that if you're out there doing things you think you should do, to grow your practice and it's not working and you're doing it just because someone else told you you had to, that doesn't mean that it's right for you, right? If it doesn't feel right to you, if it doesn't align to who you are as a clinician, who you want to attract, what feels good to you, hear this. Your clients will sniff that out. They will be able to tell. If you are putting yourself out there in a way that doesn't feel good, if you feel salesy or slimy or weird about something that you are doing in your marketing, that is a sign that you need to check in with yourself. It is not a sign that you need to just push through. Now, marketing yourself can be uncomfortable, especially as a therapist, right? Talking about your areas of expertise, putting yourself out there as an expert, it can be uncomfortable. That's different from it feeling disingenuous, right? And so if there are things that you're doing, if it's posting on Instagram and it just totally isn't you, if it's the how salesy you feel like your website copy is or your psychology today profile or whatever, if that doesn't feel like you, then you're hurting yourself. Now, why? Because if you're putting yourself out there in your marketing as one person, but your client is actually going to get a different version of that person in the therapy room, all you're doing is creating the potential that they're not going to trust you, right? We want your marketing to be an extension of who you are as a therapist so that whoever, whenever they're bumping into you for the first time, whether that's on Psychology Today or your website or whatever, they're getting a taste of you. If the taste they're getting of you isn't you, then we're hurting ourselves, right? So I really, really want you to just check in for a minute. If you have those gut moments where you're like, I don't like doing this, this doesn't feel authentic to me, that's a sign that maybe you shouldn't do it, right? And I'm a huge advocate of marketing yourself, right, strategically. Social media can be a great tool. Psychology Today can be a great tool. Websites are great tools. But if what's happening inside of those channels doesn't feel aligned to you, it's a sign that you need to go ahead and check in because your clients are going to either know, they're going to sniff it out and they're going to be like, this doesn't feel genuine, or they're going to be like, I resonate with this person, and then reach out to you. And what they get from you isn't actually what you put forth in your marketing. So not being authentic is legitimately the number one thing that you might accidentally be doing in your marketing simply because you're following advice that someone else has put out there. So, I just looked on an SEO keyword research tool. People are looking for private practice marketing thousands of times per year, right? Like if you haven't Googled it, your colleague has. It is out there. People are looking for how to market their private practice. And if all you do is just take that advice and just apply it and not put it through that filter of, is this right for me? Does this feel genuine to me? You might end up hurting yourself, even though you have the best intentions of growing your practice, right? Or maybe reading someone else's Psychology Today profile because you know that they get clients and putting it up as, your own, using that maybe a little bit too heavily as inspiration, and it doesn't work, right? But it worked for them. Just because it worked for them doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. Marketing is not one size fits all, especially in the therapy space, because there's so much nuance to you and who you are as a clinician and who your ideal client is that you can't just copy and paste what's happening out there. Be that website copy, be that Psychology Today profile copy, what people are doing on social media. Now, being inspired by those things, absolutely. But if you aren't putting it through that filter first, then you might ultimately be putting something out there that isn't going to get you results, despite you trying very, very very, very hard to get those results. So, all right, that is the number one problem that I see in my clients is that they're not being authentic and they're not putting things through that filter before putting themselves out there. And then they email me and they're like, Anna, I feel salesy. I feel slimy. And I'm like, well, let's check in on that, right? And as soon as we sort of change that, then whatever they're putting out into the world is actually totally aligned to who they are as a clinician. They end up getting results. I see that happen a lot. Next, the second way you might be unintentionally hurting your marketing is by diluting your expertise. Hopefully, you're an expert. I know it can be hard to say that. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that can sort of happen when you think that way. The fact is, I'm going to tell you, you're an expert, right? You've worked really hard to be where you are, to open this practice, to serve clients. So you're an expert. We're not debating that. What you might accidentally be doing is diluting your expertise. Now, the biggest way I see clinicians do this is by not communicating a clear niche, right? We talk about niching all the time in this group. There's an entire section, an entire topic where you can get a whole bunch of trainings on that and discussions. But if you're not telling people that you can help them in a certain area, how can they know, right? If you aren't the one communicating that, then you're leaving that open for interpretation. So if you are not comfortable stating a certain, problem area or diagnosis as your specialty right now, that's okay. There's still a very, very clear way that you can talk about your expertise and resonate with your ideal client in a way that shows them you know what you're talking about and that you can help them. Now, the other way that you might often be diluting your expertise in your marketing is by speaking way too generally about things. And I've actually had some pushback from some copywriting clients before on this, because we'll meet and we'll go through my strategic exercises, and then I'll bring them their first draft of their copy, and they're like, man, this feels so good and this totally speaks to my client, but aren't we being too specific? My answer almost always is no, right? Because it's when we're specific, it's when we use really, really clear, specific examples that someone sees that and it was like, are you in my head? Like, how did you know that? If you shy away from that because you still want to attract more people, I don't want to turn people away. So I'm going to use these really general examples of the challenges that they're facing. Again, that dilutes your expertise because you don't actually seem like you know your client that well. We want to show them like, I get you and you're welcome here and I see you and I can help you, right? That is what's so, so important. That's what really, really resonates, especially in places like Psychology Today and your website, when you use those super specific examples, things that feel almost too specific, because someone's going to see themselves in that and be like, yes, how did you know, right? That's what we want your marketing to make people think. How did you know? Another place that I often see clients dilute their expertise is in networking conversations. The fact is, when you meet with a fellow clinician, when you meet with a doctor, when you meet with anyone that could potentially send you a referral source, they're going to remember you, hopefully, one way or another, right? You might be that therapist that called every Thursday for 4 weeks before I picked up the phone, or they might be that therapist that specializes in anxiety for kids. If you aren't telling them, again, this is about communicating a clear niche. If you aren't telling them how to remember you, then again, you're leaving that up to them. And that really, really dilutes your expertise, because the fact is, I want you to be known as someone, right? That's the only way that someone's going to send a referral source or, a client your way, is if that client has a need they know you can meet. If you aren't telling them what that, where your area of expertise is and how that client can ultimately be served by you, then you're leaving that up to them and hoping that they saw the potential in you, right? So I really, really encourage you, just like it's important to be authentic, to step into your expertise, to practice that if you have to, literally in front of a mirror. Like, get used to talking about how good you are at your work and who you work with. It's why inside of the Fill Your Practice formula, we focus on your niche statement. It's why you learn how to say out loud, you learn how to write on paper what it is that you do and how you help people. Because once you really start to own that, again, you start marketing yourself authentically, and you're also telling people exactly what you're an expert in and how you can help them. So that second way you might unknowingly be diluting your expertise is, or you might be hurting your marketing, is by diluting your expertise. The last thing I'll say there is, if you have a specialty page right now or a services section of your website where it's just a bulleted out list of more than 4, 5, maybe 5 things, again, you're diluting your expertise, because you're not saying, I can help you in these areas. And if you're looking for an expert in these problems, I can help. If I go to a therapist website and they have anxiety, depression, grief, disordered eating, trauma, like literally every single area you can help someone, if they are a true generalist, then I don't see them as an expert. Then you look like a jack of all trades and a master of none. And that is not what I want for you in your marketing. All right, the last way, the third way you might unknowingly be hurting your marketing, and this is something that is certainly related to the words you're using and how you're putting yourself out there, but also related to sort of the journey someone has with you, is you're making assumptions about your client. And this is something you probably don't realize you're doing, right? You would never intentionally make assumptions about your client, but I see this happen so often, specifically on websites, but also in places like social media. So you are sometimes assuming that your client knows how therapy works, and you haven't told them what the process is and what to expect. You're assuming that they know where you're located. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on a strategy session with a potential client and said, now, where are you located? Because their website didn't tell me. That is such a no-brainer, right? And something that you don't necessarily realize you're accidentally doing. You're making assumptions that your client knows what to do next. So you make this really great case for how you can help someone, but you don't tell them, oh, schedule a free consultation, or here's, how to engage with me in the next step. And it's just reach out, get started. Like, get started with what? Like, therapy's a big deal, right? And you need to hold their hand. You need to show them what to do. So you're making assumptions that they know what to do next, that they understand what things mean. Hopefully, you know that in your marketing, using jargon and really clinical terms can be really, really harmful, because all that does is make you look intimidating. All that does is say, you need to understand these words before you'll understand how I can help you. That is the opposite, right, of what we want to be putting out there. So if you're using a lot of clinical jargon and you're not describing what CBT actually means, what EMDR actually is, what they can expect from DBT or EFT or all of these acronyms, what a psychodynamic approach is, whatever that is, if you're not describing those things in words that they can understand, then all you do is look intimidating and stuffy and make them feel like they need to know more in order to reach out to you. And the fact is, they don't need to do anything, right? They don't need to know anything more. They just need to understand that you can help them and reach out to see if you're the right therapist for them, right? That's the sort of invitation we want to be offering on your website and in your marketing. And you're making assumptions that your client knows how you can help them. If you are not talking about the transformation that someone can experience as a result of working with you, then you are unintentionally hurting your marketing, because you're not actually speaking to the motivation of why someone is looking for therapy at the end of the day. I just made a post about that today, but the fact is that when you are marketing therapy, you are not marketing therapy. You are marketing the fact that you can help someone experience a better version of themselves, that there's a transformation possible, right? You're never making guarantees. You're not telling them that, their entire life is going to change. What you're saying is it's possible, is that I can help you. You're casting some vision, right, about the transformation that's possible, because at the end of the day, that is what is directing someone to ultimately go ahead and decide to reach out to a therapist. Why does someone decide to get on psychology today and finally look for a therapist when they've been thinking about it forever? It's because they're like, you know what? I need to make a change. Talk about what that change can be and what life can be like as a result. If you are assuming that they know that, well, they know that I can help them get there, then you are missing out on a really, really, really strong marketing message, because you're not telling people, you're not casting that vision and allowing them to see themselves experiencing the results that you can ultimately help them, that are ultimately possible to them through the work of therapy with you. So if you are making assumptions about your client, you're hurting yourself. I want you to look at your website. I want you to look at your psychology today and your social media and say, does this person know where I'm located? Do they know that I understand them? Do they know how I can help them? And do they know what to do next? If those things are not covered, then there is so much potential left there in your marketing. And you've been, making this website, you've been tweaking your psychology data profile, still not seeing results. Oftentimes it's because you're leaving some of that out there and ultimately not really, really resonating with what it is that your client needs and what they don't need. They don't need all this clinical jargon. They don't need to know where you went to school. They need to know, do you understand me? And how can you help me? Okay, great. You can help me. Now, what do I do next? That should be the theme of your marketing. So the 3 ways that you could potentially be hurting your marketing and not even knowing it. Number 1, you're not being authentic. Again, put everything you do in your marketing and your practice growth through the lens of, does this feel genuine to me? And if the answer is no, step back and figure out where that change needs to happen. Number 2, you're diluting your expertise. You're not stepping into who you are as an expert, telling people how to remember you, and ultimately, showing people that you are the expert that they're looking for. And number 3, you're making assumptions. You're assuming that they know how therapy works or what they need to do next or how you can help. And by failing to communicate that, you're failing to really connect with them on the level that they need in order to realize that you're the therapist for them. Friends, as usual, hope this was helpful. If it wasn't, and if you're like, I have more questions, pop them into the comments. And also know that there is always a Practice Power Hour available to you. Practice Power Hours are my 1-hour strategy sessions where I sit down with therapists like you. We dive into your goals for your marketing. We review your website, your psychology day. We rewrite it. We do whatever we can inside of a single hour. You get a recording of that session and you can walk away with the marketing guidance and recommendations that may have been missing between you Googling private practice marketing and you putting yourself out there. If there's a gap there and you want help filling it, I would love to support you. So thanks for being here. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I don't see any comments, which hopefully means this made sense. I appreciate each of you. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.